Welcome to the Explainer. So, if you're a focused learner, someone who actively wants to achieve big things, but sometimes finds yourself totally frozen, just unable to start, well, you are in the perfect place. Today, we're taking a really deep dive into the fascinating neuroscience behind why we procrastinate. We're going to unpack the actual neurological brain glitch that stops us from acting, and more importantly, how to override it using one incredibly simple step-by-step guide. Get ready, because this is going to fundamentally change how you approach your to-do list. Okay, let's dive into this. It's kind of the ultimate question, isn't it? Why do we set these massive goals, map out beautiful visions for our lives, and then do absolutely nothing to make them happen? Right off the bat, I want to validate something for you. If you've ever planned something huge and then completely stalled out, it is not because you're lazy. Seriously, laziness is just a myth we use to punish ourselves. What's actually happening is a biological, deeply ingrained cycle in your brain that is actively preventing you from pursuing those hard things. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll cover why you are not lazy. Second, the neuroscience of avoidance. Third, the sneaky productivity disguise. And finally, the 10-minute rule. So, starting with part one, you are not lazy. Let's uncover the truth about why we actually avoid hard things. For decades, we've been sold this idea that if we just had a better calendar, maybe a fancier planner or a stricter schedule, we'd magically stop procrastinating. But procrastination researcher Tim Peichel spent years studying why people just don't do the things they promise themselves they'll do, and his core finding, it flips this whole concept completely on its head. He states, procrastination is not a time management problem. It is an emotion regulation problem. Let that sink in for a second. It is not about time, it is entirely about how you manage your feelings. Here's exactly what Peichel means by that. Think about when you sit down to start a highly important creative project, a big academic assignment, or even just gear up for a really tough workout. Your brain immediately treats that task as a negative emotion trigger. It generates these intense feelings of self-doubt, overwhelm, anxiety, or even a very real fear that the end result just won't be good enough. And your brain? Well, above all else, it absolutely hates experiencing negative emotions. It just wants to escape them instantly. Let's move to part two and see how this builds into the neuroscience of avoidance, stepping inside the brain's battleground. Now that we know a difficult task triggers a negative emotion, let's look at the exact mechanics of what happens next inside your head. It is quite literally a biological battleground in there. Neuroscientists call this the avoidance loop. Step one, you face a difficult task. Step two, boom, you experience dread or anxiety. Step three, you flee. Maybe you reorganize your desk for the 5th time or mindlessly open social media. And step four, you get this hit of short-term relief. But here's the dangerous part. In psychology, behaviors that get rewarded get repeated. That immediate relief essentially rewards and trains your brain to default to this exact same loop every single time you face a challenge. Every time you stare down a hard task, there are two distinct systems fighting for control of your actions. On one side, we have the amygdala. Think of this guy as the overprotective villain of our story. It's your brain's ancient alarm system. It detects threats, and if a task feels overwhelming, it literally screams, "Run! This is dangerous!" On the flip side is our logical hero, the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex. Now, this is the rational manager that's supposed to take that fear signal, shut it down, and push you right into action. So, when you procrastinate, the alarm system, the amygdala, is winning. This is known as an amygdala hijack. Your emotional, fear-driven brain completely overrides your rational brain. And the terrifying truth here is that every single time you let the amygdala win, you are physically strengthening the neural pathway for avoidance. Because, well, what you repeat, you become, right? Your procrastination circuit gets faster and stronger, while your discipline circuit weakens like an unused muscle over time. Which brings us to part three, the sneaky productivity disguise. This is how your brain actually tricks you into feeling busy. Now, I know what some of you are probably thinking right now. Wait a minute, I don't just sit around doing nothing when I procrastinate. I'm actually always busy. Well, your brain knows that doing absolutely nothing would trigger massive guilt. So what does it do? It masks your avoidance as actual work. Take perfectionism, for example. Research actually shows that perfectionist professors publish significantly fewer papers than their peers simply because they're too afraid to start. Or think about the other little disguises we use. Color-coding your notes instead of actually writing the paper. Endlessly tweaking a resume 5 times instead of just applying for the job. Reading 10 business books without ever starting a business. Honestly, you might even be watching this very explainer right now just to avoid doing a project you should be working on. Researchers have a perfect name for this sneaky phenomenon. They call it short-term mood repair. It's basically the act of swapping an anxiety-inducing, high-stakes real task for a totally safe, low-risk task. And it's incredibly sneaky because it gives you this false sense of accomplishment. You feel like you're being productive, you're checking things off a list, but the real scary task hasn't moved an inch. You've repaired your mood, sure, but you haven't actually solved the problem.
To truly understand how disconnected our emotions are from our tasks, Feichel conducted this fascinating study involving 45 university students. Now, this was back before smartphones were everywhere, so he gave all 45 of them physical pagers. He paged them 8 times a day for 5 days, leading up to a strict, major academic deadline, asking them to record exactly what they were doing and exactly how they were feeling about their assignment at that very moment.
And this brilliantly illustrates what we've been talking about. Early in the week, the students constantly justified delaying the work. They fed themselves that classic lie, right? Oh, I work better under pressure. I'll just do it tomorrow. But when the deadline finally forced them to act, the data was stunning. 0 out of 45 students were glad they waited. Every single one of them wished they had started earlier. And most importantly, they universally realized the task was never actually as bad as they had feared. So the takeaway here, you aren't actually avoiding the task itself. You're avoiding the way you incorrectly think the task is going to make you feel. All right, let's get to the good stuff. Part 4, the 10-minute rule. This is your practical, step-by-step guide to bypassing this brain glitch once and for all. Listen, if your brain can train itself to avoid, you can absolutely intentionally train it to do the exact opposite. After 20 years of research, the answer is wonderfully, almost embarrassingly simple. You just have to interrupt the avoidance loop manually. So the crucial point is to follow these 3 steps. Step 1, catch the avoidance and name the emotion. Literally say out loud, I feel really overwhelmed right now. Just naming it instantly switches your brain from that emotional amygdala back to the rational cortex. Step 2, make the task stupidly small. And step 3, just start for 5 to 10 minutes, completely ignoring the final outcome. You don't need to finish it, you don't even need to perform well. You literally just have to start. Let's look at exactly how to shrink these tasks, because making them stupidly small is the secret ingredient here. If your overwhelming goal is to write a whole essay tonight, your brain is going to scream and run. But if you shrink it down to the stupidly small task of just opening a Google Doc and typing literally anything for 10 minutes, well, the threat vanishes. If the goal is an hour-long dreaded workout, the amygdala panics. But if the task is just, hey, put on my shoes and step outside, it feels completely harmless. You are basically tricking your brain's alarm system by drastically lowering the stakes. You really have to cement this truth into your mind. The extreme dread of starting is always, always worse than the actual process of doing the task itself. It's like a giant illusion. Once you cross that 10-minute threshold, the absolute hardest part is completely over. Natural momentum takes over, the anxiety drops away, and the actual completion process is always easier than your emotional brain suggested it would be. So, I'm going to leave you with a bit of a challenge. You now know exactly how the avoidance loop works. You know exactly how your brain disguises it, and you have the exact step-by-step guide to break it. So, what stupidly small 10-minute task are you going to start the very second this explainer ends? Seriously, don't let your brain trick you into just clicking on another video. Pick your task right now, set a timer for 10 minutes, and just start. Thanks so much for joining me, and go get it done.